Hello and welcome to Kent Tonight, live here on KMTV. I'm Finn McDermott and here are your top stories on Tuesday, the 13th of January. Save our supply. We head down to Maidstone's new bottled water station to hear how the town has been coping with the water issues.
And the annoying thing is that I genuinely feel that South East Water are not learning from those lessons.
The worst moment of my life. A Sittingbourne widow has written a book to help cope with the loss of her husband from COVID.
Everybody who was lost in the pandemic was a person, and I wanted to tell my story, but I also wanted to tell the real story of the pandemic.
And from suffering to Sevenoaks, meet the retriever who's starting a new life in the town after being rescued from a kill shelter.
Hopefully, we can get it done as soon as possible because he is clearly in pain.
Now, with the water crisis here in Kent entering another day, people in the areas around Tunbridge Wells and Maidstone have been hit with supply issues. No running water means showers, drinking water and flushing toilets aren't accessible to everyone, causing disruption in the county, with many filing into bottled water stations to replenish supplies. Our reporter Maisie Walker is down at Tunbridge Wells, where one of the stations has been set up today. Maisie, what's the atmosphere down there like? Talk to us about it.
Well, cars have been steadily arriving since about 3:30 p.m. this afternoon when this water station first opened. There's been a constant flow of vehicles coming in and out to collect bottled water, and I've spoken to a number of local residents, many of whom did not want to go on camera but were not shy in expressing their frustration at this outage, especially considering this is not the first time that it's happened. Several people told me that they feel let down and are struggling to understand why this disruption has occurred again. More recently, I spoke to residents who had just finished work and came straight here to collect water, and understandably so, as you can see, many were unhappy. It's been a long day, it's raining, and now they've had to come here to make an additional journey to collect some bottled water. There's also been loads of confusion between residents, some not understanding why some of their neighbours have the water and then they don't. One resident I spoke to described the situation as pure disaster.
It's a pure disaster. It's affecting us a lot, especially we are from a working class family. My wife is a solicitor. I do my own construction. It's terrible. What can we do? We just have to put up to it and carry on.
It's been very confusing for a lot of
South East
people
Water
down there.
has said that a number of issues were responsible, including the impact of Storm Gretty, as well as power cut at one of its pumping stations, which affected the local water supply. Earlier today, I was joined by Mike Martin, the MP for Tunbridge Wells. He gave a strong indication that this crisis was far from over.
What I would say to my constituents in Tunbridge Wells is, based on what I know, and I'm obviously speaking to everyone involved in this, and based on kind of my experience of dealing with South East Water, everyone in Tunbridge Wells should really only expect full supplies to come back at the earliest this weekend. So people should think about that and plan for that.
Now, sounds like it's quite confusing down there for a lot of people. You mentioned some people have the water, some people don't. Tell us, what's the root cause of this, Maisie?
Well, the root cause, as South East Water said earlier, that a number of issues were responsible, including the impact of Storm Gretty, as well as a power cut off from one of their pumping plants, which affected the local water supply.
I see. And tell me, what's the atmosphere like down where you are at the moment at the station?
Yeah, so it's raining pretty heavily where I am. Obviously, it started to calm down now, but when we first got here at 3:30, just as this water station was preparing to open, it was raining very, very heavily. And the wind was starting to pick up, as you can probably tell from my hair. Not a great day to wash my hair yesterday, but there you go. And I'm freezing and cars are just starting to slow down. There was a rush period where people were coming straight back from work, straight to here to collect some bottled water. But it is starting to slow down, and obviously the volunteers here have been non-stop.
I see, and we can see some of the South East Water workers behind you still giving out that bottled water. Has there been much frustration talked about by people as they've been coming down? Obviously, Tunbridge Wells was affected by water issues back in 2025, so I'm sure people are sort of seeing it as though it's a problem that's re-emerged. Tell me about some more of that reaction we've been seeing.
Yeah, so local residents, as I've been seeing them come through, been popping my head in, seeing if they would be available to talk on camera, many of whom did not want to. They've been saying that they're just frustrated, angry, but most of all confused as to why this is happening. Why Tunbridge Wells? What's going on that is causing this constant outage? So a lot of negative atmosphere that's going on currently over here, yeah.
Absolutely, and I'm sure with schools being shut as well, parents must be extremely frustrated. Has it been mainly families you've been seeing coming down, or individual people? Tell me a bit about how many people as well. Tell me about the scale of this issue. Whereabouts in Tunbridge Wells are you as well, mate? I don't think we covered that.
I'm just outside the Odeon in Tunbridge Wells. Mike Martin was here earlier to meet me too. Most of all, I'm seeing individual people in their cars. There have been a few families, but again, did not want to speak to camera or me at all, in fact.
I see. Thank you so much for your time, Maisie. Next, we'll be taking a quick look at how the water supply issues have been affecting people down in Maidstone. Our reporter Kristen Hawthorne was down across the town, especially near Moat Park, where a new supply station was set up. Let's have a look at what Kristen has been finding out.
It's raining, but there's no water, meaning South East has had to open another water station at Maidstone Leisure Centre for those with little to no supply in the area. And as the day continues, the traffic is continuing to build. The water in the area has been on and off for 5 days, but it's a lack of communication and infrastructure investment in particular that is angering local councillors and MPs.
So I've been working with them now for nearly 15 years, showing my age here, but they're not learning. The communications with this particular matter have been really, really bad, too little, too late, too complicated. At the end of the day, people just want to know when they can boil the kettle again to make a cup of tea, when can they take a shower. So the level of the communications has been overly complex and conflicting.
Yeah, so certainly over the weekend, a lot of people were on that priority list were waiting for visits and contacting me, and we were having to pass those details on to South East Water. It felt quite chaotic, and certainly the messages that were coming out of South East Water were pretty awful in terms of being utterly inaccurate at times. So we are liaising as best we can with South East Water so that the council can get the right information out to the public.
Local residents didn't seem surprised by the problems, but they said they didn't expect it to be just as bad as it is.
It's getting past a joke really, because it's just not, it's been low pressure for a little while, and I think it's all the new builds they're putting on, and they're not putting the water supplies in, are they? So I don't know, they've got to do something, and we can't live on bottled water.
We stupidly moved into the area from like a mile away, and I knew that the water went on and off sometimes, but we did still move there. But I actually didn't. We didn't know it was going to be as bad as what it is.
South East Water reported at 4:55 p.m. that pressure problems at its site, combined with a burst main, are affecting supplies in Coxheath and Maidstone, leaving some customers with no water or reduced pressure. The company apologised for the disruption and said they are working to resolve the issue as quickly as possible. In Luce, South East Water said supply should have been restored, but customers without water can use the water station, which will remain open until 10 p.m. As the calls for David Hinton to resign continue to pour in, only the taps will tell if it actually makes a difference. Kristen Hawthorne for KMTV, Maidstone.
That statement at the end of that piece there came to us at about 4 p.m. So that is a very recent statement from South East Water's website. Now, Kristen Hawthorne joins me in this studio. So, Kristen, tell us, you've been all over Maidstone. You still have your muddy boots on, as I can see. Tell me, what have people been saying, and what has the atmosphere been like in Maidstone today?
Well, in the piece you only saw 2 people that I spoke to, but of course I spoke to, upwards of 10 people. It must have been more than that. just going up to cars, seeing how people were feeling. Some people didn't want to give me an interview because they were so annoyed at the fact of what was happening. Like I said in the piece, people didn't really seem surprised. They seemed, you know, they expected it, I suppose, due to the recent happenings that had happened over December. But this month, I mean, yeah, the local reaction was just sort of, maybe they're used to it at this point.
Absolutely. And from your perspective, coming into it as someone who doesn't live in Maidstone, what was the scale of it? How many people were coming into these filling stations? And this is, for a lot of people, the only way they can get water. Was it very busy? Was it manageable? Tell me a bit about that.
So I was there from about 12 until I think it must have been 3:30. And during the morning, during this early afternoon, it wasn't too busy. But I mean, towards when I was leaving, the traffic did start to pile in as people were leaving school, people were leaving work. And then as I left, there was traffic about 1.5 miles, 2 miles down the road.
I see. Well, I think that is all the time we have for this part. But thank you so much for bringing us this news, Kristen. Obviously, difficult for the people of Maidstone and Tunbridge Wells. So hopefully something can get sorted soon. Still to come after the break, we'll be joined by our reporter Naila Mohammed, who'll be talking us all through some more of your top stories from throughout the day. We'll also have a brief look at an airport that has just 5 passengers a year and losses of £30 million, as well as all your latest sports news. All that and more in just a few minutes. See you soon. Hello and welcome back to Kent Tonight, live here on KMTV. Now, continuing our coverage of the water crisis, it's not just households here in Kent that are seeing their taps run dry, but businesses too. For many restaurants, pubs and other venues, it's been closed doors and quiet cash machines as the supply in certain areas has dried up. So while businesses are coping with the advent of AI, they're also having to keep an eye on the pipes. I spoke to Tudor Price from Invicta Chamber of Commerce about this earlier. Thank you so much for joining me, Tudor. First of all, with the water issues across Kent today, what have you heard from businesses here in the county about how they've been coping?
So this is another blow, unfortunately, for businesses. Obviously, places like restaurants, retail, hospitality, they're all going to struggle because, of course, they can't function. They can't open the doors and take customers in. Now, we already know that the impact it's had in Tunbridge Wells and the sort of woefully inadequate compensation scheme that's currently in place under the guaranteed standards of service set up is not going to go nowhere near to sort of addressing the losses that have been incurred before Christmas. And so we continue to call for the government to play a part here to try and actually do something about bringing in some meaningful compensation for some of these businesses.
I see. And obviously this isn't something that businesses can see coming very easily. How would you advise businesses to prepare for this kind of thing in future?
Well, I suppose in a first world country, you shouldn't have to have that sort of resilience plan in place for water supply. We should be able to make sure that there's adequate backup. And I think what we're seeing here is the results of a major lack of investment in infrastructure for the water companies for a very long time. And that's why it's a government issue. But in terms of the businesses today, I guess it's making sure that you have containers to which you can go to a place of water provision, make sure they're filled up. If you've got things like coffee machines and bits and pieces like, check to see what the specification is about taking grey water. Can you actually use that? Making sure that you are maintaining the health standards and getting advice where you can. But yeah, you need to make sure really you've got the capacity to be able to store water and utilise it to make sure that you can at least flush toilets and wash hands.
I see. Moving on. AI, it's been a big topic, not just on the news, but now it's only at our fingertips. People are using it for all sorts of things, shopping lists, cooking recipes. We've even started seeing AI-generated search summaries. Can you tell me a bit about how you might be advising businesses at the Chamber of Commerce to use AI?
Well, actually, we've got an AI conference coming up later in this year, in June, which we will be exploring the sort of myriad of areas where AI is sort of touching our lives, not just in business, but as a society as a whole. So everything from protecting your own intellectual property, of course, what you do in terms of when you're using information that's actually not correct. So there's a whole host of aspects. But what we're encouraging businesses to do is to look at this rather like the arrival of desktop publishing. When it arrives, suddenly we're all capable of producing our own business cards and compliment slips and things like that. And AI will be the same. It will become the Swiss Army knife of administration tasks and functions. So I think businesses, understandably, need to be cautious and have a look about what the future holds in terms of what it means for their market and their industry sector. But they should also embrace the functionality and capacity building that AI will bring to many offices. And I think this is something that we're trying to work with the business community across the county to really ensure that staff are fully skilled in all the platforms that are out there to really make the most of the opportunity for productivity.
I see. I'm sure there was a time when the internet was the emerging thing, and for businesses it was imperative to get to the top of search lists. Do you foresee that eventually we might get to a stage where businesses will be gunning for almost the top spot to be recommended by AI as part of that algorithm?
Absolutely. Already smart organisations are out there sort of providing advice and guidance to businesses as to how they can make their websites AI friendly, because as you say, many search engines now will actually do an AI sort of summary. So it used to be search engine optimization was the buzzword, SEO. Now, of course, it's actually AI summaries, making sure that your website contains the right type of content to get itself listed at the top.
And next, newly published figures have revealed that a local airport in Romney Marsh has recorded a £1.6 million loss. Lid Airport, owned by Saudi Arabian billionaires, has attracted almost no commercial passengers in recent years and is now suffering a huge financial loss as a consequence. With only 5 commercial passengers in 2024 and 18 last year, the airfield owes its survival to the wealth of its owners. Total losses now exceed £30 million, but the runway still remains active, with almost 29,000 flights a year from private aircraft and Coast Guard helicopters. With rival airports expanding, serious questions remain about its future. Bosses at the airport say they have a strategy to make it a successful, thriving aerodrome and employer in Kent. They added their strategy centres on turning it into a future of flight cluster focused on drones and unmanned aircraft systems. Now let's take a look at all your latest sports news. First of all, we're going to bring you news of a new project from Gillingham FC, their fan zone that has now begun construction at Priestfield. The project, planned by the club over a year ago, sees a 900-capacity area that will be a place for supporters to eat, drink and relax on match days. It'll also be a venue for other events. The facility should be done ahead of the start of next season, but hopes are high for the fan zone to be ready as early as the World Cup this summer. The club's managing director, Joe Comper, said, "We think we're on track and we are excited about that. It's going to be a very cool space." Next, a Tunbridge athlete has won the Kent County Cross Country Championship for the 4th year in a row. James Kingston completed the 12,000-metre distance in 38 minutes and 16 seconds, not only 2 seconds faster than his time last year, but also more than a minute ahead of second-place finisher's time of 39 minutes and 19 seconds. In the senior women's category, Blackheath and Bromley Harriers AC's Andrea Clement took the title, her time of 31.7, 10 seconds faster than her clubmate Hannah Clark. Now in women's rugby, a crucial comeback has led Medway women to win their NC1 South East clash with a resounding 24-10 against Horsham women. In the cold conditions, Medway found themselves stuck in the mud as they conceded 2 uncontested tries before half-time. However, in the downtime, captain Steph Rukin rallied her players, enabling them to hit the ground running in the second half, with Esme Conway scoring 2 rapid-fire touchdowns assisted by conversions. Laura Charter followed this aggressive play by breaching through the opposition to achieve yet another try. Finally running out the game was Medway's Thacine Ali as she scored her first try at the club. Next, a Sandwich darts player has received the backing of a well-known pub chain after pledging her full-time allegiance to the sport. Darts star and mum Vitti Corteruccio of Sandwich has received sponsorship by Faversham-based brewery Shepherd Neame. The pub chain stepped in to support her, sponsoring her as a new professional. She's ranked 43rd in the World Darts Federation, and she ran one of the Shepherd Neame pubs in the past, the Fitzwalter Arms near Canterbury. Corteruccio said her feelings on the matter were that they have a strong relationship with the brewery, and she's always played in pubs, so it feels very fitting. That's all for your sports news. Now time to take a very quick look at the weather. It'll be a cold start to the evening, light rain across much of the county, temperatures reaching highs of around 12 degrees, dropping to lows of 7 there in Ashford. In the morning, temperatures falling further, reaching lows of 4 in Dartford, highs of 6 along the coast. And as we move into the afternoon now, mist is expected in Tunbridge Wells, temperatures peaking at around 8 degrees with lows of 6 there in the north of the county. And here's your outlook. Thursday will bring some light rain, highs of around 10 degrees. On Friday, there'll be a little sunshine breaking through the cloud, highs of 9. And on Saturday, cloud returning, temperatures remaining much the same. And don't forget, you can keep up to date with all your latest stories across Kent by logging on to our website. That's kmtv.co.uk. There you'll find all our reports, including this one.
After saving 5 lions from Ukraine, the Big Cat Sanctuary have set their sights on another big rescue, but this time for a much smaller cat. Ursa is a female Eurasian lynx found by Wild Animal Rescue in Kyiv, and the sanctuary are fundraising for £100,000 towards her rescue.
Yeah, Ursa's background's really sad. She was originally discovered as an illegal pet in Ukraine, and then she was taken after being, confiscated from the owner to Natalia at Wild Animal Rescue as a temporary holding space. Now, with that, she had an infection in her stomach. She was riddled with parasites. She was malnourished, underdeveloped, far smaller than any lynx her age should be. She didn't have the right nutrients or care or diet. She'd never been outside before as well, and she still hasn't. So that's why it's pretty urgent, not only because she's not in the right environment, but also bombs are falling all around her space.
The money would go towards Ursa's transport to Kent, as well as any emergency care she might need, with any extra funds also going towards her long-term care. Now, the Big Cat Sanctuary are mainly known for their big animal rescues, whether it's the 5 Ukrainian lions or tigers like Luca here. But they also have smaller cats as well. Just like Ursa, they have Reese, the Eurasian lynx, as well as the Asiatic golden cat of Frank. But what are the differences when caring for a big cat versus a smaller one?
Most of the big guys are quite hardy, whereas smaller animals, smaller cats can be much more sensitive, more shy. So as keepers, we'll just have to be quite aware of our volume when we're talking, when we're working around the unit, our body language around her, making sure it's just nice and soft, nice and slow, nice and quiet to help her settle as best she can. So where she'll be moving into, our small cat rescue centre has been an enclosure on site for many years. We're just doing some adjustments with the amount of planting, adding in extra CCTV. It's historically housed leopards and pumas, so actually it's a nice 3D space for a lynx to use.
Behind the scenes, a lot of work goes into finding, transporting and caring for these animals. So for those at the sanctuary, when they rescued the 5 lions, it was a moment that was very emotional, but really showed the importance of what they do.
I just remember bursting into tears, giving a lot of the team a big hug. It was really emotional. It is an emotional roller coaster, and especially with this sort of rescue where you do not know what could happen. That the stakes are much higher, as it is a war zone.
Once Ursa arrives in Kent, she'll be housed with Blob, the resident bobcat, where the sanctuary will give her more medical care and a better life in her new forever home. Finn McDermott for KMTV in Smarden. Coming up after the break, we'll be speaking to Jonathan Hawker, who's a Tunbridge Wells resident who's particularly annoyed about all these water issues he's been seeing in his town. All that and more after the break.
Hello and welcome to Kent Tonight, live here on KMTV. I'm Finn McDermott and here are your top stories on Tuesday, the 13th of January. Save our supply. We head down to Maidstone's new bottled water station to hear how the town has been coping with the water issues.
And the annoying thing is that I genuinely feel that South East Water are not learning from those lessons.
The worst moment of my life. A Sittingbourne widow has written a book to help cope with the loss of her husband from COVID.
Everybody who was lost in the pandemic was a person, and I wanted to tell my story, but I also wanted to tell the real story of the pandemic.
And from suffering to Sevenoaks, meet the retriever who's starting a new life in the town after being rescued from a kill shelter.
Hopefully, yeah, we can get it done as soon as possible because he is clearly in pain.
Near the end of last year, residents of Tunbridge Wells struggled with their water, with many people's taps running dry for a period of many days. Now, these issues have returned, as many will know, but not just to the area of Tunbridge Wells, but to Maidstone and areas of East Sussex as well. With more supply stations cropping up across the county, we sent our reporter Kristen Hawthorne down to one in Maidstone to find out more about these issues.
It's raining, but there's no water, meaning South East has had to open another water station at Maidstone Leisure Centre for those with little to no supply in the area. And as the day continues, the traffic is continuing to build. The water in the area has been on and off for 5 days, but it's a lack of communication and infrastructure investment in particular that is angering local councillors and MPs.
I've been working with them now for nearly 15 years, showing my age here, but they're not learning. The communications with this particular matter have been really, really bad, too little, too late, too complicated. At the end of the day, people just want to know when they can boil the kettle again to make a cup of tea, when can they take a shower. So the level of the communications has been overly complex and conflicting.
Yeah, so certainly over the weekend, a lot of people were on that priority list were waiting for visits and contacting me, and we were having to pass those details on to South East Water. It felt quite chaotic, and certainly the messages that were coming out of South East Water were pretty awful in terms of being utterly inaccurate at times. So we are liaising as best we can with South East Water so that the council can get the right information out to the public.
Local residents didn't seem surprised by the problems, but they said they didn't expect it to be just as bad as it is.
It's getting past a joke really, because it's just not, it's been low pressure for a little while, and I think it's all the new builds they're putting on, they're not putting the water supplies in, are they? So I don't know, they've got to do something, and we can't live on bottled water.
We stupidly moved into the area from like a mile away, and I knew that the water went on and off sometimes, but we did still move there. But I actually didn't. We didn't know it was going to be as bad as what it is.
South East Water reported at 4:55 p.m. that pressure problems at its site, combined with a burst main, are affecting supplies in Coxheath and Maidstone, leaving some customers with no water or reduced pressure. The company apologised for the disruption and said they are working to resolve the issue as quickly as possible. In Luce, South East Water said supply should have been restored, but customers without water can use the water station, which will remain open until 10 p.m. As the calls for David Hinton to resign continue to pour in, only the taps will tell if it actually makes a difference. Kristen Hawthorne for KMTV, Maidstone.
Now, Maidstone isn't the only area affected by these water issues, with Tunbridge Wells also seeing their supply affected. One resident has a background in crisis management and communications and says he isn't pleased with the handling of the issue. I spoke with him earlier for more detail. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Jonathan. I suppose, first of all, can you give us a rundown of how you and your household have been impacted by this water loss? Give us a run through of it.
Well, the situation today is probably a pretty good indication, really. We haven't had any running water in our home since Sunday morning. Before that, we had a couple of hours of water delivered to the property each morning, and then the water was switched off. We feel that probably was a ruse in order to circumvent the compensation requirement that would be placed on South East Water if they fail to provide water to a property for 12 continuous hours. The impact for us is pretty extreme, really. You know, we can't flush a toilet, we can't wash the dishes, can't wash ourselves unless you get a sink of cold water or try and top it up a bit with a kettle using bottled water. We can't wash any clothes. It's pretty grim, but you know, we don't have it too bad. Others are having it much worse, and that's because the impact of this goes beyond the home. Schools are closed currently still in some parts of Tunbridge Wells, and that has a massive impact on working parents who are having to try and manage children at home. I was talking yesterday to a consultant surgeon within the NHS who was having to stay home from his hospital as a consequence of having 2 kids sent home. And then there are the vulnerable. Vulnerable people are supposed to have bottled water delivered to their homes by South East Water, and I'm getting persistent reports of people who are being missed out. And these are people who have no mode of transport to get to a bottled water distribution station. And even if they do get there, there is absolutely no guarantee whatsoever that South East Water will be holding that place open. Yesterday, they were shut without any notice whatsoever, and today they've been difficulties since 11:30.
I see, and there were issues last year around November, December time. Is there a kind of a feeling among people here in Tunbridge Wells of this is back and this is now a recurring problem rather than just a one-off?
Yeah, look, you know, we started off feeling fairly stoical about this, but you know, we're now basically enraged because, you know, this isn't the first time. You know, a few years ago we had problems right across Christmas. We've had intermittent issues ever since. And then, you know, at the end of November, beginning of December, we had a period of 5 days without water, 5 days where we had to boil water, you know, before we used it from the tap. Then on the very day when the chief executive of South East Water, the man we like to call Hopeless Hinton, gave evidence to the Parliamentary Select Committee in which he said that the performance of South East Water in the handling of this crisis was 8 out of 10. That very same day, the company once again shut off water supply to thousands of homes in Tunbridge Wells. And yesterday, of course, the situation has escalated with property as far away as Headcorn, Maidstone and East Grinstead in Sussex also suffering difficulties. Parts of Tunbridge Wells, I gather, are starting to get some water, but nobody knows for how long, and it isn't arriving here.
Next, a suspected arson attack has caused thousands of pounds worth of damage at a nature reserve in Maidstone. A fire broke out at Fant Wildlife Nature Reserve yesterday afternoon, destroying vital equipment used by volunteers and visiting school children. Our reporter Naila Mohammed joins me in the studio now. So, Naila, talk to us about where this all started.
So it started around 3 p.m. yesterday afternoon at the Fant Natural Reserve in Maidstone, and it was in the tool reserve shed that they have in the area, and firefighters arrived quickly on scene with 2 fire engines and quickly disposed of the fire. But then the damage was already done. Trustees say there was nothing inside the shed that could have ignited the fire. And given that and the previous vandalism that has occurred at the site, police are treating it as suspicious and as arson, and they've remained on scene until 7 p.m.
I see. We can see some photos now of that damage. Tell us a bit about how serious was the impact for the people?
Was quite serious. I mean, the trustees of the site said it was devastating. I mean, you can see on the screen right next to us just how much of it has been burned and the damage it's done to the wildlife and to the area surrounding. Around £5,000 worth of equipment has been damaged and destroyed, including tools used by volunteers for the activities and events that they do, especially for children. I mean, you've got to think this is an area that hosts scouts quite often. And they host all these kind of activities, including, you know, bug hunting and identifying insects. And the book they used to identify has been burned as well.
Absolutely. I mean, definitely an area where the wildlife is so important to what they do there. So absolutely. I suppose for such a natural area to be hit by a fire, what happens next? Well,
like I said, police are treating it as suspected arson. And as such, they're considering it an ongoing investigation, and they're appealing for anyone who's around 3 p.m. around the area yesterday to come forward with any information on anything they may have seen that could help them with their investigation. But the trustees are determined to keep activities ongoing. Volunteers have been asked to bring in their own tools to make sure no activities are stopped or suspended. And they're very much determined to making sure that none of the wildlife is further damaged in their preparations.
I see. Well, thank you so much for bringing us more details on this story. Fingers crossed that everyone at Fant Wildlife Reserve can get things back up and running. Thank you for your time. Now it is time for a very short break, but we'll be bringing you more news from across the county. One story where our reporter Chloe Brewster met a 4-year-old rescue dog from Sevenoaks. That dog is in need of a hip replacement. But in the meantime, you can also check out our socials. You can follow our TikTok and you can also take a look at our Facebook for all the latest news where you are. We'll also be taking a look at a woman who has written, I believe she's from Sittingbourne. She's written a book all about her husband's death during COVID, and we'll be talking with her about how writing the book helped her through her grief and exactly why she chose to do it, and really the impact that it had on her and what the message she wants to share is all about. Rather than reducing people to numbers during the pandemic, but highlighting that there are people behind those statistics. We'll have all that and more after this short break. Hello and welcome back to Kent Tonight, live here on KMTV. Now, a woman from Sittingbourne whose husband died during the COVID-19 pandemic has published a book that she says helped her through her grief. The work is titled, Is Daddy Going to Be OK? A question that Emma Charlesworth's daughter asked her when her husband Stuart was taken to hospital. I spoke to Emma about the book and how writing it helped her cope with the loss. Thank you so much for joining me, Emma. I suppose my first question is, tell me about the moment that spurred you on to start writing the book and that journey that you've taken on.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. So I decided to write the book because I felt that we focused a lot on the numbers, or the media focused a lot on numbers in the pandemic, but everybody who was lost in the pandemic was a person. And I wanted to tell my story, but I also wanted to tell the real story of the pandemic, whilst also making sure my husband was never a statistic of the pandemic. So I always wanted him to be more than just a number. And so I decided to write my story and write my family's story.
I see. And tell me about the books. I believe the book's titled, Is Daddy Going to Be OK? Tell me about the emotion behind that and your lived experience of what it was like to go through that, and how writing the book has really helped you on your process.
Yeah, so the book is titled, as you say, Is Daddy Going to Be OK? And that is the question that my daughter asked me after my husband had been taken by ambulance to Medway Maritime Hospital. So he walked down the stairs to the ambulance and then we didn't see him again. And she looked at me and she said, Is Daddy going to be OK? And I didn't have the answers for her. It was so early on in the pandemic. None of us knew what was really going to happen. And so I just had to look at her and say, I don't know. And as a mum, saying that to your child is one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, but I just decided to be honest with her. So that's the meaning behind the title. It's a genuine question that was asked of me. So writing I found really cathartic. So before I wrote the book, I launched a blog in 2021 called Life is a Roller Coaster. And again, that was just my way of actually trying to make sense of everything that was happening to us. So I would write predominantly of an evening before I went to bed to try and get things out of my head. But then, and that's what led to people saying, are you going to write a book to talk about your experience? But I found it a really cathartic process. It was a really tough process. So putting myself back into 2020 and 2021, which was obviously when we were in lockdown, we were very isolated. It was when my husband first died, was actually really tough. And it did result in me going back into therapy, but actually that then resulted in a really positive experience for me. So overall, I view the whole writing process as a really cathartic and a really worthwhile thing for me to have done.
I see. For anyone who may have also lost someone during the pandemic, is it something that you'd recommend they do, not even to publish it, but just to get through this? And I'm also curious the span of the book. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, so I think writing is really cathartic, and I know so many other people who have been bereaved that actually find it really beneficial to just put things down on paper. It just helps to get it out of your head. And I think, so the book it tells a little bit of our life pre-pandemic. So you get to know a bit about my husband and about me and my daughter pre-pandemic. But then it's the first 15 months. So it finishes in July 2021, which was, I don't want to spoil the book for anybody, but that was a pivotal moment in our journey. And so that felt like the right natural end for that one. So it's the 15 months. So it tells the story of his illness, his time in hospital, his subsequent death, and then how we started rebuilding our lives and how we started just trying to find a new normal, for want of a better phrase.
I see. And tell me, what do you hope people take away from the book about your husband and about the experience?
I would like people to just think about the fact that there were people behind those numbers, and to realise the impact that the pandemic had on ordinary people. And I'd like also people to realise that it's a story of hope. So it's not just a widow's story. It's not just someone telling their story. It's actually, this story of hope that we went through the most horrific experience, but we slowly started to grow around that grief. And it might just help someone who's in a particularly dark point right now. If they were to pick it up and read it, it may just be that little bit of hope that things do start to change over time that they need at that point in time.
Now, don't forget you can keep up to date with all your latest stories across Kent by logging on to our website, kmtv.co.uk. There you'll find all our reports, including this one about a virtual dementia tour that came to Strood last week. With the use of sensory equipment like spiked insoles, flashing lights, loud sounds and gloves, the experience was aimed at giving attendees a glimpse into the lives of those diagnosed with dementia. A warning for the upcoming segment, it does contain flashing images.
I felt like I knew a lot about dementia, but this is a good eye-opener.
By partnering with Training to Care, charity Carers First have been able to bring the virtual dementia tour to Medway in an aim to help carers, professionals and staff better understand and support those with dementia.
This piece of training allows the carer and any professional that's working with someone who has dementia to experience what it's like to have dementia and how it affects their senses. Quite often when people hear the word dementia, they think about memory loss, but what they don't necessarily consider are the sensory changes that happen, things like vision and sounds, being able to hold things with their hands, colour changes. So what this experience does, it allows, with some tools and with sights and sounds, to feel like you're having those same experiences that person's having. And what that will then enable professionals and also carers to understand is why people with dementia might have certain behaviours.
With dementia currently affecting more than 900,000 people in the UK alone, Carers First say that 1 in 3 people will become a carer at some point in their lives. This makes the virtual experience a stepping stone in raising awareness of the syndrome and its effects.
It was really amazing to understand what it is to be inside the shoes of somebody with dementia. So it's really a good eye-opener, really is amazing, really good. It was not what I expected at all.
Going through that experience, it's a real eye-opener. I mean, that feeling of not being able to see what you're doing, seeing where things are, and that noise, I mean, that constant noise must just be absolutely awful for the person going through it.
So I've been told by people who've already taken part in the tour that it's nothing like they expected it to be. So I thought I'd try it out for myself.
We had to put insoles in our feet that were spiky, so you kind of feel how they feel when they're walking. You had to put gloves on, glasses on, wear the headphones, and there was all kinds of stuff going on. Sirens in your ear.
Although the virtual experience looks just as strange as it feels, it gives a sneak peek into the lives of those with dementia, helping carers and staff better support each other and those that they care for. Kristen Hawthorne for KMTV in Strood.
Now, hip replacements are usually reserved for people, but this 4-year-old golden retriever from Sevenoaks is in great need of one. Having been taken from a kill shelter in Turkey, Barney took a road trip to the UK alongside 6 other pups, where he was put in a foster home here in Kent. But since his rescue, suspicions have arisen that Barney may be in need of a little bit more than just care and love. Our reporter Chloe Brewster travelled to Ightham in Sevenoaks to meet him.
From suffering to Sevenoaks, Barney the Golden Retriever is one of 6 dogs to make the 2,000-mile journey from Turkey to the UK just before Christmas. He's ended up here in Kent, in the good hands of foster Nicola and her daughter Lily May.
I saw him on Facebook. It was a post that Angels for Animals put up, and we absolutely love Golden Retrievers. We've been obsessed with them for about a year. And I saw him, and I don't know why. They asked for a medical foster, and I thought I could do this because of my experience. So I applied, and I had a video call with the charity, and a couple of weeks later, here he is. We think that at some point he was owned in Turkey, so he comes from Turkey, and that he was born with hip dysplasia, and it looks like from his x-rays that he has been probably hit by a car. He's also got one of his canine teeth is snapped off as well. They did some x-rays in Turkey, and you can see with this x-ray both hips aren't good, but one particularly, the bone looks like it's come away. It's not where it should be.
In order to live a life without pain, Barney needs a double hip replacement, a surgery costing £10,000.
Hopefully, yeah, we can get it done as soon as possible because he is clearly in pain, and I think if you see his x-rays, you'd know that he's going to be in pain. with those sorts of injuries.
Seeing like a little one like that in so much pain and knowing that he should have all this energy and he should be able to run around and go on long walks, it's so heartbreaking. And so being able to get this money for him to get these surgeries done, it will just give him a complete lease of life.
We've had this year, I think, well, last year, I should say actually now, I think we would have had 5 broken hips that we've needed to be fixed. And they're very expensive. We've still got 1 dog over in Turkey that we're looking for a medical foster for, just because it's very hard to find homes like we've been able to find for Barney. So we're incredibly grateful that he's been able to make this great trip and we're able to fundraise. Now he's here and he's able to get that good veterinary care. Seeing these dogs that we are able to get out, save, rehab and to bring over, it just means everything to see them living like a truly kind of free, happy life.
Nicola has created a Just Giving page to help raise the money for the surgery. She hopes it will help Barney finally live a pain-free life here. Chloe Brewster for KMTV in Ightham.
You've been watching Kent Tonight live here on KMTV. There's more news.